about him and thank you, Craig. I'm
You're
going to
welcome.
tell you more about him in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about our upcoming webinars after this. In March, I know I announced last month that it was me. I have pushed myself out because why? Because I can. So March, we have Sandra Colley, who is going to talk to us about the learning sprint and turbocharging your training. And Sandra is an excellent speaker, and I think you're really going to like it. And then in April, we have Jim Chaney, who is going to be talking to us about multiple choice questions, a different way to write multiple choice questions. Now, I know, it's not sexy. I get it. But if you are like me and struggle with the whole STEM, distractors, multiple choice questions, I think you're really going to get a lot out of it. So again, I would like to welcome everybody. And if you are not yet a member of SITE, I would just like to take this opportunity to let you know that it is, well, I don't know, maybe life-changing might be a dramatic way to put it, but there is a lot of value in being a SITE member, not just in terms of the learning and how we support each other with, building on our skills and that sort of thing, but I have to say, we're just a fun, nice group of people, and you would like being a member here. Now, if you're already a member and you have your ITP designation, we are doing an open call for Train the Trainer facilitators. If you would like more information, or if you would like to be a speaker during a Train the Trainer session, or you just feel the need to help a sister out because I really need your help, reach out to me and let me know. And this brings me, without further ado, to my friend, Sedrick Newbern. Sedrick, I know before I started, you wanted to say a few things.
Well, before you go through the introduction, I'd love to find out who I'm talking with today. So, in the virtual space, we don't get a chance to walk up and introduce ourselves to people before we speak. And that usually calms my nerves a bit when I know a few people in the audience. So if you would just type in the chat like your name, obviously, but where you're from and maybe how long you've been a trainer. I'd love to get some idea.
Fantastic. Well, before I hand over the entire reins to Sedrick, I just want to tell you a little bit about him. He is an entrepreneur in residence in the Department of Management for Western Kentucky University. He's the president of Newbern Consulting, LLC. He's a consultant with Alexander Success Group. He's an Amazon best-selling author and a John Maxwell certified coach, trainer, and speaker. A while back when we were chit-chatting, while everybody was in the waiting room, I told him he is truly the Swiss Army knife of insurance. When he shows up, relationships are recreated into workable, productive alliances that produce measurable results for individuals and businesses. Years of experience, and I know yours have shown this too, have taught Sedrick that personal and business difficulties usually stem from relationships that are stuck, burdened, and unworkable. Sedrick has an innate ability for identifying what isn't working and revealing it so that relationships can be recreated into something that's life-giving and empowering. Now, besides being a great friend over the years, Sedrick has been an incredible resource to me. He's one of those people that when you have no idea where to turn, his answer is always, I can find it, here's how you do it, or I know a person who. And he has saved my sanity more than once. So without further ado, I give you my friend, my resource, Sedrick Newbern.
Oh my goodness, Jen, are you trying to make my allergies act up on this? Thank you so much. That was incredible. I have to be honest with you. How many of you all, first of all, that's Sedrick back in the day when he was trying to do homework. That's actually one of the photos I used for a book cover. But wouldn't it be great if we could go through life and have someone like Jen do our introduction. Wouldn't that be amazing? How nice would that be, right? We all would, I'm sure, feel so much better about ourselves and about life in general if we had the luxury of having someone read our resume as we were walking in the room. Now, I want to talk today about imposter syndrome, and I think you all can appreciate this. I, in fact, had imposter syndrome as I was getting ready for this presentation because, frankly, hold on one second, my slide's not advancing. See, there you go, Jen. Technology. There we go. Um, for me, I am often uncomfortable with small talk. In fact, being an insurance agent for quite a while, being in marketing and sales for even longer than that, the irony is I am not a big fan of networking, largely because of this question that you see on the screen. And you may say, well, why? I mean, I've had a really nice career and so forth, but just the mere thought of someone walking up to me in the middle of a conversation and asking me, what do you do? That puts me in a space of, are they questioning my value? Are they wondering why I'm even here? Like, who invited this weirdo? And does he belong? And I don't know if you've had those same issues, but for me, that can sometimes be debilitating, especially when you are in a room and you look around and you don't see anyone else you know. Now, I jokingly say I'm an extrovert, but I have introverted tendencies. My wife is an extroverted introvert. So for me, as much as I like to be out and hanging out and talking to people, if you see me in a room like this, I'm more likely in a corner talking to somebody I already know than I am necessarily walking up to a random person, introducing myself, and getting to know them. Why? Because I struggle with this thing called imposter syndrome. So have you found yourself in a situation where you feel like others are questioning your abilities and qualifications? And if you have, I'm going to see if I can make the chat thing work for me. If you have, just raise your hand in the chat. Just say yes, no, maybe. I know I have. But here's the funny thing. You guys are all insurance trainers. And for those who know what I'm talking about and you know why I'm laughing, agents and salespeople, frankly, would never question you, would they? They're not going to say, do you even know what you're talking about? Right? They would never do that, right, Jen? They would never say to you, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what it's like to be in or run an agency, or for that matter, even sell insurance, right? So we find ourselves in that space quite often where we're going to question ourselves like, do I have what it takes to put forward this conversation, this message, this training to get people over a hump? Because they are, in fact, questioning my abilities. So, imposter syndrome, simply stated, definition reads, the internal psychological experience of feeling like a phony in some areas of your life, despite any success that you've achieved in that area. You might have imposter syndrome if you find yourself consistently experiencing self-doubt, even in areas where you typically excel. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. Imagine having a 30 plus year career. I know I don't look like I could have been working for 30 years. I started working when I was 10. But truthfully, my career has spanned over leadership roles in both nonprofit and for-profit. I've been in marketing leadership for a Fortune 50 company. I've actually started a consulting business. I've bought and sold an insurance agency, helped others buy and sell their insurance agencies. I've written and published 4 books, one that in fact became an Amazon bestseller. I've launched a publishing business as a result of writing those books and having so many people come to me saying, hey, can you help me write a book? And as a result of that, I've now helped other people publish over 30 books. And get this, and as Jen said, I'm a Swiss Army knife. I DJ. I started DJing as a teenager, and it was a hobby, and I did it through college. And when I became an adult, wink, wink, I decided to put that away. And about 6, 7 years ago, when I realized that I really didn't have a hobby other than work, I decided I wanted to get back into DJing. And since then, I've turned it into a thriving business side hustle that I'm doing in my 50s. And when I tell you I'm having a ball, last Friday night, I DJ'd a lady's 65th birthday. I got two weddings now booked back to back in April. And when I'm done here today, I get to go to my son's high school. We're hosting the district basketball tournaments, and I will be playing music at at the gym. And so the kids are coming up to me. If you got the wild student section at your high school, the kids come up to me afterwards and say, "Hey, we got to get a photo with DJ Enough Said," so they can post it on their Snap. now, now fast forward after this 30 plus year career, I now on a weekly basis walk into a college classroom with very intelligent and often opinionated college students. And I'm there teaching them about entrepreneurship. So when I tell you that Jen chose the right person to talk to you about this whole concept of imposter syndrome, she really did, because I truly deal with this on a daily basis. So again, I am really not an expert. And I will tell you, imposter syndrome is real. The anxiety can be paralyzing. I mean, literally, it causes me at times not to act or not to move forward. I was actually sharing with Jen and Craig earlier that I had been wanting to launch a podcast and had so many people encourage me to do so. And I finally did it the other day. 5 years, and I repeat, actually 6 years after my initial thought of launching the podcast. But even funnier than that, when Jen reached out to me saying, "Hey, got this opportunity for you to speak to the folks with Sight. I think you'd be great." And we talked about the topic, and I was pumped. I was excited. I was like, yes, I can do that. I know imposter syndrome. I live it, I breathe it. I got the tattoo across my chest. And when we got done talking, I started jotting down notes and pulling together some ideas about what I wanted to say. And then it hit me. I am about to do a training for people who train people for a living. Who am I to be giving a talk or training to people who train for a living? And guess what happened? I stopped. I started freaking out. Imposter syndrome hit me like a brick wall. And so today I want to share with you some of the things that I've used over time to help me get past it. Because fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, I now have the ability, and I also have the self-awareness to know when it's creeping in and how it's impacting my performance. And again, the training came from countless moments in my life where people frankly told me what I couldn't or shouldn't do. So a couple of examples, and I'm not going to give you my whole autobiography because you guys, again, that's a book for another day, and I'd rather you buy that book than for me to just blab on for 4 hours talking about some of these moments in my life. But let me just tell you really quickly. Shortly after graduating from college, I'm in my early 20s. I'm working for the YMCA here in Nashville. And I was working in a community that frankly was not the typical community nor the typical client for the YMCA, because it was a lower income community with less appreciation and engagement in athletic activities, nutrition, and health. And yet here I was managing a team program and doing marketing to promote this YMCA. And I had a vice president come in after the executive director who hired me moved on. And this vice president sits down across from me from my desk and looks at me in the eye and says, Sedrick, we're going to have you focus only on the team program because we don't think that you know anything about marketing. Now, keep in mind, the team program that I was doing, I had raised hundreds, and I mean hundreds of thousands of dollars, getting donations from organizations that had frankly told the other corporate office of the YMCA no. But they gave the money to my program because I had developed relationships in the community. I was not afraid to make the ask, and I had a compelling argument about mentoring African American youth and preparing them for their careers. I had marketed that program so well that we had radio spots that were for free airing on the local radio station. I had done the same with our membership. And although my numbers were not matching, some of them were, let's say, socioeconomically um, higher status communities across Nashville and Middle Tennessee, but I was doing okay. So I realized very quickly that this gentleman really was trying to get me out the door. Now, what did I do as a result of that? I said, there's no way anyone will ever tell me that I don't know anything about marketing. So I decided to go work on my MBA. And within 15 months, I was working in the southern region of Allstate Insurance Company. And then in just a few short years, less than a decade later, I had become the regional marketing manager for Allstate in the DC, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and West Virginia area, which is how I met Jen. Regional marketing manager for Allstate Insurance Company with mega hundreds of thousands of dollar deals, with millions of dollars of earned media and impressions, with the Washington D.C. football team, the Baltimore football team, the baseball teams in both of those major cities, not to mention all of the college programs across those states. And yet I didn't know anything about marketing. And then in a few short years, I ended up in home office, literally 10 years after that conversation with that vice president telling me I didn't know anything about marketing. And now I'm actually responsible for African-American and Asian-American marketing across the entire country for Allstate Insurance Company. But somehow I didn't know anything about marketing. Now, fast forward, the corporate world was driving me crazy. They were laying people off. And I thought, I need to make a safe space for me and my family. I'd like to create something that my kid could one day run. And so I thought I wanted to be a small business owner anyway. So I ventured down the path of becoming an Allstate agent. Woohoo! Shout out to Allstate. And in the process, if you know the process, you go through a series of interviews, and it didn't matter the relationships I had. I still had to sit down with a sales leader for that territory. Now, keep in mind that up until this point, I had developed processes that had been implemented countrywide. I was traveling the country training sales leaders on how to better equip and educate and engage their agents in consulting practices, right? So I'm sitting down across from this gentleman at lunch, and he says to me, you know, Sedrick, I've seen your work. I think you've done a great job in corporate, and you know a lot about marketing. You get the irony, right? I didn't know anything about marketing. Now I know everything about marketing. But then he looks at me and says, I'm just a little concerned that you may not know what it means or what it's like to run a business, or do you really know anything about sales? It was at that moment I actually laughed because now I'm approaching 40. So I had a little more confidence, a little more swag, if you know what I mean. And I looked at him and I said, well, sir, with all due respect, outside of your selling phase to become a sales leader, have you really sold anything, and have you run a business? And there was a nice little pregnant pause. And I said, and yet you're helping other agents manage and run their business, and you're approving who can become a small business owner or not. So maybe I should be asking you, do you know what you need to know to help me run my business when I become an agent? And after one of those really, really deep swallows that we have, he and I both laughed. And of course, he approved my file because he said, yep, this dude definitely thinks like an agent. Right? So these are just a couple of examples to show you throughout my career where they were pivotal moments, right? That I could have cowered back, fallen victim to my imposter syndrome, realizing that maybe I don't know, maybe I don't have what it takes. That self-doubt that tells me that I'm unqualified could have crept in, even though I'd had great success. Those moments could have derailed me. And frankly, you and I would not be talking today because I never would have met Jen, because I never would have pursued a career in corporate America in marketing. So I want to give you all a chance to talk about yourselves. I've talked enough about myself. So think right now of a time that you have felt imposter syndrome. Now, I won't ask that you put this in the chat, but just think about that moment. Think about the emotions that came with it. Think about the impact that it had on your ability to move forward with whatever it was you were doing. And it doesn't have to be work related. Frankly, it could be about parenting. It could be about dating. It could be about having a hard conversation with your adult senior parents about life choices and decisions that they need to make at this point moving forward. Think about that. So now I want to give you all the 4 Ps of imposter syndrome and see if these resonate. Number 1, people pleasing. I am the poster child of people pleasing. I want everybody to be happy. I like that I'm seeing comments in the chat saying thumbs up, things. I love that because I want to make sure that once you see me, that my light shines and that there is something left and deposited in you that you may never forget. You may not remember my name, but there might be some moment, some nugget that I leave with each and every person that I encounter. But we all know that people pleasing can be exhausting. Perfectionism. I can be that way. I know my wife can be that way. And heaven forbid, but my poor son at 16 years old, he doesn't seem to have the perfectionism issue because he could care less. But perfectionism is one of the P's of imposter syndrome. And then there's paralysis. I can't move forward. I can't do anything. I am going to research and research and research and research and research because I want to make sure no one can poke a hole in what it is that I am doing. And then last but not least, procrastination. Yes, procrastination. Now, we all have some forms of it. I like to call it creative spark. There's nothing like waiting until the last minute and staying up all night to try to put it together before the presentation the next day. But it's also a form of imposter syndrome. So in your profession as educators and trainers, have you ever felt overwhelmed by procrastination when you're trying to prepare a workshop? I know there's some upcoming workshops talking about, how to form multiple choice questions. I may want to sit in on that because trying to create questions for these college exams can be a bit tricky as well. But have you ever had some procrastination in trying to get that taken care of? Has the training design for you been such a focus that you're committed to the perfection and not necessarily the post-learning implementation by the people that receive the training? So if you have, or if you felt those ways, or you recognize now, maybe I did do a little bit of that, question, what did you do in order to move forward? So I want to share with you some things that I found on a website called Mind Tools on how to overcome imposter syndrome. Number 1, first and foremost, acknowledge your feelings. Now, sometimes that can be a little challenging for all of us, right? We sometimes can say, no, I'm not procrastinating. I just got so much to do that I really think it's time for me to clean every single washboard, baseboard in my house. And I should probably change out all the batteries in the smoke detectors because if I don't do that, I'm going to be so distracted before I can put this presentation together. We all do it. But here's a little quick tip. If you don't do it, it's a great habit. Uh, you're right, Jen. The batteries will not change themselves. Number one, to acknowledge your feelings. Keep a journal. And that may seem so elementary, but for those that journal, they talk so much about the enlightenment that they received after writing thoughts down, writing their feelings down. And for that matter, going back and looking over, a prior week, a prior month, a prior year to see where their feelings were and to gauge where they are now. Now, what I would encourage you to do, though, is in the process of journaling, write positive statements and affirmations to yourself. Tell yourself, I got this. I got this. Um, looks like there may be a question from Nancy.
Nancy, you may have had your hand up answering a question, but if you have a question, you can take yourself off mute and ask Sedrick. I think you're okay with interruption, Sedrick. Is that right?
Yes, yes, I am. Allows me to drink water.
Well, maybe she's having trouble unmuting, but let's go on. And if she unmutes, we'll stop and go back to her. Awesome.
All right, keep me posted. All right, so keep a journal, write positive statements and affirmations to yourself. Number two, talk to others. And I mean, have a circle of friends. Have a circle. I like to call them a board of advisors. I have a board of advisors. I got two best friends that I've known from, over several decades, not several, but you know what I mean. 30 years, one I've known for almost 45 years. They are my cut up buddies. We have jokes. We have, debates on sports and politics and you name it. But when I need to bounce things off of them, they're going to give me honest feedback. Now, I like to say in my class, you don't want to have a Kanye circle. For those of you that don't know Kanye West, he's this rapper turned fashion designer, and he's a very interesting character to say the least. But I will say that he has people around him that more often than not say, yes, Kanye. In fact, he shortened his name to Ye. So now all they do is say, yay, yay. You don't need people like that around you. You want to have people that are going to say, no, yay, that's not going to work. No, that does not fit for this. Even getting prepared for this presentation, I reached out to my circle and my guys gave me some ideas, some points, and even encouragement to remind me that I was made for this moment, right? You need that in your life when you have imposter syndrome. Now, here's the irony. So the one guy who I'm going to quote at the end of this, by the way, I used his quote as part of his encouragement to me that I'm going to leave with you. He listens to my podcast the other day after having a very terrible day at work. And because of the podcast, he realized some things about himself that he was suffering with imposter syndrome as well. So you see how things come full circle. So talk to others, talk to a counselor, talk to anyone that is qualified to give you constructive feedback. Number three, develop a quick response plan. Negative self-talk happens. It just does. We can't avoid it. It's just how we are wired as humans. But you've got to confront it. Often, it's better to think instead of what did I do or why did I do that? To instead think about why did they do that? Because for many of us, we walk in a room and we feel like we're not supposed to be there. And so naturally, we start asking, well, why did they ask me? What do I do? What did I do to make them ask me that? As opposed to saying, well, what is it with them? And I know that's not the best example because that is truly an easy icebreaker. It's a way to get to know each other. And guess what I did when we started this off? I asked you, what did you do and for how long? So that's the whole reason I did that. We're comfortable with saying it, but we don't ever ask ourselves, why did they need to know that about me before they had a conversation with me? Does that change the dynamics of this conversation when they know that I am a senior leader, a manager, or a frontline employee? Does it matter that I've only been training for 5 years or I've got a 30-year career that spans across multiple organizations? Do you care that I'm a best-selling author on Amazon and that I've written 4 books? Maybe. So ask yourself, why did they do that? As your way of stopping the self-talk that could be negative for yourself. Now, this is my favorite one. Now, I don't know if anyone has ever done this before because this was kind of new for me. But the suggestion was to do your own SWOT analysis. Now, I know a lot of us have done SWOT analyses before. And it's one of those things that you expect to do it in, in business, for work, et cetera, but not often do we do that for ourselves. Now, I'm trying to copy there's a link that you can use. So I am posting it in the chat. If you'd like, by all means, go do your own SWOT analysis. Consider, what are the things that you're strong in? What do you do well? And then what are some things that you can improve on? Now, I'm going to tell you, and then opportunities, if the doors were open to you, what would that look like? And what are the things that may hold you back? What are some things that might harm you? Now, I'm a big believer in the Strengths Finder. I love that approach because, being in corporate, I've taken every psychological profile you could possibly take. But that one really resonated with me because it wasn't just pointing out how I behave and how I think or how I respond and react in certain situations. It focused in on the things that I do well and how to maximize that. And I'll tell you, there are some things that I don't do as well as others. For instance, I pride myself in being able to eat with my left hand with a fork. I pride myself in being able to use chopsticks to eat. But when I'm really hungry, I mean really hungry, like as soon as I get done with this, I'm going to go eat with my right hand and a fork because I want to get it done. So why would I spend so much time trying to improve my left-handedness or my, skills with, no. I'm going to focus in on what I'm good at and make sure that I can improve upon that. And by the way, there is a typo on the screen. Look at me just completely exposing all of my imposter syndrome. That's what happens when you go and you grab an image from the internet, right? But I want to point out that oftentimes our imperfection leads to pivots for other people. So put a pin in that one. Develop a support network, as I said before, that's going to motivate you and that you can believe and trust that they will help you counter your negative inner critic. Now, this one is a big one for me. Overcoming perfectionism. There's a couple of ways you can do this. Number one, take regular breaks. When I was building this presentation, which I've been working on now for a few weeks, I would come back to it after a period of time because when I find myself getting wrapped around the wheel, I realize that I want it to be perfect. I've been asked to do a talk next week, and I've been working on that one as well. I've had to literally walk away from it multiple times. I asked my wife, Denise, to read it just to make sure that I'm not in a space of trying to make it perfect. because again, I want to please people. So taking regular breaks and using relaxation techniques helps. Focusing also on the bigger picture. Now, I've learned over the years of speaking, doing public presentations, but especially working with young people. There's nothing like walking into an auditorium filled with teenagers, jacked up on sugar and caffeine, and you got to talk to them, right? The bigger picture is that often is one person in that room is there to hear what you're there to say. So often I will lead in my presentation. I'll start off by saying, hey, listen, guys, I want you to understand something. What I'm about to say to you may not be for you. It may not resonate with you. This may be an hour out of class, and that's all it is for you. But there's somebody in this room that needs to hear what I'm going to talk about, and it's going to change their lives. It's going to put them on a path that they've been needing to find for a while. So my ask, my request of you is not to disturb the person beside you, because you don't know if the person seated to your right or to your left is that person that needs to hear what I'm here to talk about today. So if you would just be respectful of that person, you can tune me out all you want. Just don't distract the people beside you, so that if that person beside you is here to get a word from me today, that they're able to get it. For me, that's the bigger picture. And I've seen it happen time and time and time again. In fact, I did a talk at an alternative high school in Waukegan, Illinois, and I made that statement. And then about a week later, Matthew, my son, and I walk into the Baskin Robbins, which we had been in a million times before. And this young man, as I'm walking up to the counter, he looks at me, he says, "It was me. It was me." And of course, I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? I'm just here for some rainbow sherbet for me and my boy. Like, what are you talking about? He says, I was at your presentation last week, and I was who you were talking to. Thank you. You talk about a life-changing moment, an allergy provoking moment, and for that to have happened in front of my son. It blew my socks off, because I know, and I want to leave with you, there's always a bigger picture. So the perfectionism that you are stressed with, just like in the previous slide, I could have spent an hour in Canva trying to respell strengths so that it was correctly spelled. Or I could call it out and say that that's not the point. The point is that each and every single person on this call is wonderfully made with gifts and talents that you are here to touch and inspire others with. Now, another way of overcoming perfectionism is to set realistic and challenging, achievable goals. Now, here's a fun one for me. You gotta own your successes. This is hard for me, because as a people pleaser, I want other people to be successful. It is very hard for me to celebrate my own successes, to celebrate my wins. And I don't care, every single person on this Zoom could send me a personal handwritten note to tell me you just changed my life and yada, 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 yada. And no, I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just saying it as an example. But I still won't walk away and celebrate that moment. It's really difficult for me, because I often feel that I'm not qualified. You see how this is going? So I've learned now I've got to own my success. I keep a record of positive feedback. I have a drawer right beside me here in my office, and I tell you the notes that I've gotten from my students, from high school students that I've spoken to, from adults, from people going through divorce, people that are single moms struggling, trying to raise their children. The feedback helps me, because there are days when I, and Jen just said it falls into the breathe category, when I can't breathe myself. It's hard. And oftentimes I will pick up a note and just read it to remind myself again of the bigger picture. Now, I won't go into any details, but we've had several deaths of students on campus over the last couple of months. One student, in fact, was in my class. And as I'm walking on campus that day, very heavy, concerned because I'm about to walk into the class that he was attending, and knowing that no one else in the class knew what had happened except for the people in his team. It was very heavy. And that day I walk in and I look at my mailbox, which the only thing you get as a professor are all these random books that want you to use use their text for your class. But this day there was a handwritten note from a student that I had the prior semester. And she said to me, there are days that are difficult for me. It's a challenge for me sometimes just to get up and go to class. But when I came to your class, I always had a smile on my face because you had a smile on yours. You made me feel special. And I wanted you to know it was the little things that you did that made the difference for me. Thank you. I still have that note in my bag and I look at it every single day. And this was just last week. You've got to keep those positive moments of feedback because there are going to be tough times. There's going to be the moment that your training is going to flop and you're going to need it. There's going to be that time when you look at your kid and you're like, who birthed you? Because you definitely did not come from me. This is not cool. Then go find that card where they said that you're the best mom or the best father on Mother's Day or Father's Day to remind yourself of the big picture. And then, frankly, never, ever, and I mean ever, give up. So my buddy, as I'm talking to him about this presentation, he sends me back a text. And the text starts off by saying, as a man/woman thinketh, so they are. We all know that. Our minds are challenging. They keep us in a space sometimes of really high highs or very low lows. So if we can train our mindset to stay in a positive space and to really focus in on the successes and the impact, our strengths and the opportunities that we have in front of us, how much more successful could we be? And so his quote to me goes on to say, never give up, never stop believing in yourself. He's telling me this. And I'm like, me and this guy have been roommates 3 times. You know, we've been married and divorced and supported each other through the marriage, the divorce, and the remarries and all this good stuff. Career changes, moving and traveling all around the world. And here he is reminding me to never stop believing in myself. And he says, Sedrick, you are wonderfully and uniquely made for a purpose. I'm going to start over because I'm messing up. Maybe a little emotional about this. He said, Sedrick, you are wonderfully and uniquely made for a purpose that only you can decide to fulfill. Let that rest for a moment with your spirit. You too are wonderfully and uniquely made for a purpose that only you can decide to fulfill. Because again, as a man or woman thinketh, so you are. He went on to say, no one else can determine your destiny. Just don't stop believing and pushing. And he ended it with, you got this. In all caps, you got this. So I'm going to end this by saying to each and every single one of you, you got this. Imposter syndrome ain't got you. You got this. Thank you so much. I want to open it up for any questions that there may be out there, and also to try to catch up on some of these chats.
I still have a note in my desk that was written by my very first claims manager in 1989 when he retired. And it was just on a little card with the company logo on it. And it said, you represent one of my best hires, one of my best hiring moments, never stop learning, never be scared, never stop learning, and something else. But I've had it in my desk for 35 years now.
35 years.
And I also kept every nice card I ever received from my clients when I was an agent for 17 years. So I'm totally digging that because I thought I was the only one that but I kept them in a desk, and anytime anyone yelled at me, I would just let them yell because, folks need to get it out of their system, and I would just read the nice cards.
Yes. No, I kid you not. I mean, I have notes from, 35 plus years of just working with young people, education. And I think it was Craig that posted a note about walking into a room of insurance professionals and thinking to yourself, are your students more qualified to teach than you are? Or maybe should I be one of the students instead of the teacher? Why do I have the microphone? Craig, that happens when I walk into my entrepreneurship classes. I have students that have created businesses at age 15 that they are still running in college at 19 and 20 years old. They're getting funding. They are doing it. And I'm sitting there like, I know you're way smarter than I am. But they said, ironically, I had one young man who came to me. He was in my class now, I guess, a year ago. And he wanted to launch a financial literacy program for marginalized high school students because he recognized where he was fortunate to go to a private school in Louisville, but his mom was a principal at another school in a lower income community across town, and he would go there, and he realized that things were being shown differently in the private school versus at the school where his mom was a principal. So he said, I'm going to put together this app. And he pitched the idea in class, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I can't help this kid. This dude is brilliant. Well, he's right now in an incubator program that we have as part of Western Kentucky University. And he is meeting with investors and programming and coding and all this incredible stuff. And he looks at me just yesterday, Jen, introduces me as the facilitator of resources. So when you introduce me that way, that's where the allergy kicked in, because I'm sitting here thinking, I always joked about it. I was like, dude, I can't teach you anything, Khalil. You are brilliant. And he says, no, you told me to do one thing, and that has made a difference in this idea becoming a reality. And that was, you told me to go ask people.
Mhm.
And part of the class, I had them go out and do customer interviews each and every week. And he said that allowed me to find out real, authentic feedback. And it allowed him to pivot, to shift the product features around. And now it's a much more viable idea because of that one little thing. And he was introducing me saying, this guy, if he doesn't know it, he's going to introduce you to somebody who does. And that's what he does.
That's great.
So,
I mean, you don't need to know everything about everything and everything better than all of your students. You don't have to be the professor on everything. You can offer a personal perspective, a skill, one connection. And if you make it personal and individual, and you tell your story and make it individualized, I mean, you're bringing them something. I mean, and you're bringing them something other people can't, because you're bringing them part of yourself. And so that's awesome.
And Craig, one thing that I learned being an insurance agent that has been a game changer, in addition to all of that, is telling them I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That is a game changer. I will say, I have no idea, but I will find out. And then the key is I go find out. But I don't pretend to know everything. I am straight up. Listen, hey, I've never even heard that word before. I got to Google that. Let me see what that even means. And I think that vulnerability, that willingness to, and just like in this presentation today, I goof up. I have moments where the slides won't advance. This clicker has worked for me all morning long, but when I started this presentation, it didn't work. I use this clicker every single day. So you're going to have those moments, but I openly share those moments because that actually allows them to relax.
Mhm.
And they see you as human and not, some superhero that knows everything. So, all right. I'd love to hear what any other questions that anyone has or moments of clarity or encouragement. I'd love that. Oh, wait.
Nicole just wrote on chat, transparency is a window for success. And I think that goes right along with what you were saying earlier about imperfection leads to pivots with other people.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think transparency and vulnerability, Brene Brown, she is my shero. Like I love what she has done. Because I've been in the corporate world and nonprofit. Oftentimes, transparency and vulnerability leads to termination, right? We get that. But as you've heard, even in my bio, relationships to me are the most valuable resource that you have. And you can't have an authentic relationship if you're not your authentic self.
Mhm.
And so if you're able to be vulnerable, then you can pivot. You can say, I don't know, and not lose the respect of those that are looking to you for leadership.
Well, Sedrick, thank you so much for sharing this with us. And I am very grateful for your time. And I am going to declare us done. Thank you to everyone who came today. And again, if you have your ITP and you would like to facilitate, let me know. Y'all take good care and we'll see you next month.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Well done.